I am glad you have found me and my session. I have the pleasure of to be moderating myself. So this is basically what I will be doing. So I will hand over the mic to myself, my screen, and I'm just gonna be sharing this window. And yeah, so in full mode, I cannot see anything. So if anybody wants to say anything, challenge is I cannot be moderating myself at the same time, or can I? No, because then I can't change my slides. Damn. Okay, good. So the idea here is data loves context. It's a thing I've been thinking on for a while, and it's really trying to understand what is the key challenge with analytics as we see it today, because there are some challenges in the way we work it. And for me, one of those challenges has been lack of context. So I will be shifting back and forth between my presentation and this, so forgive me if it takes a bit longer, and I'll also have time. Good, fine. So first thing I mentioned in my description of this that I would give you a 1-point data set. I failed because when I looked at it again after I made my description, I was like, that's not a 1-point data because that was actually a 3-point data. I actually gave you 3 informations in that single line, saying yesterday, which is a time dimension, 7, which is a unit, and ice cream, which is a type. So I failed horribly, right? I should just have said at one point we sold 7. That would have been a single data point. And that's kind of the idea here, saying that what is wrong with data is that very often that the more context we can add to any given data point, the more interesting and the more we can use it for. So you knowing that it was ice creams and it was yesterday will give you a better context and potential for analysis and doing something. But at the end of the day, even with 3 data points, yesterday we sold 7 ice creams. It doesn't give you anything, right? It's really a limited thing. And that is kind of the idea here, saying that context matters, is that if we focus too much on one part of the data, we will miss the bigger picture. And that is where I see we are very much today, when that we are trying to tell too much with too little information. So it's like if we go forward and say, okay, cool, this is a data set. This is an actual part of a graph. Now analyze it. Okay, you actually have some context here in the sense that it seems like it goes to the top. It's the highest point on this graph. But this is conjecture, right? And I can actually ask at the below saying, okay, this is information from June, and sales 1,100% from January to June. And then suddenly you get the context that it's moving forwards on its own right, that things is happening, that something, this is a curve that is going upwards. But the logical thinking in this would be, yes, this is fine. The curve has gone up a lot, and since it's gone up from with 100% from January to June, then logic dictates that it would continue going up, right? That is the logic. Whether the landing upwards, if we look at this pattern, saying this looks really positive, increasing growth. But what is the context again? So yeah, by adding another dimension, saying, then suddenly the upward curve turns into a curve, and that's not really something usable, right? But what if I gave you an extra dimension saying this is the volume of ice cream consumed in Spanish households? then suddenly there's a logic to it. You get a dimension to the graph that is interesting. It tells you it's ice cream, and naturally ice cream is tied to the seasonality. So this curve going up until June and then going down from June actually also has a level of logic in the sense that we eat more ice cream in the summer. So in that sense, context is really a central part of it, especially when we add ice cream. So what we don't have, and this is kind of the challenge here, saying we only have our own, right? This is the volume of ice cream for Spanish houses. It's fine. But the challenge is if somebody comes and asks you, so was this a good year? Did we do good? We can tell based on this. And if I ask this saying this is the worst summer in history, get another understanding of the numbers. We get the understanding that maybe for Spain, June shouldn't have been the largest month. Maybe August should have been the largest month. And from that perspective, we should be able to really reflect and saying we need information. And this is actually interesting because this represents something that we wouldn't normally add to our analytics thinking, because this is market information. So very often when we look at our own analytics data, we don't have this aspect with there. We don't understand what is going on in the market because we're only comparing to ourselves. And that is kind of the key challenge, saying to understand what's going on in the context, we not only need the full picture, we need the actual context. So what is the elephant doing? Because there's a big difference of elephant, or this being a wild elephant, or this being an elephant in the zoo. What is the job of the elephant, right? So when we analyze the data, we cannot take it out of context because the context will explain what is going on. And for me, and I've been using this a lot today when I've been talking to people about what when it comes to understanding your conversion rate, what is the key factor in understanding conversion rate? The key factor is context. The thing that will impact your conversion rate the most, except in some outliers, is what the competition is doing. So think about that for a moment. If our sales go down on a specific project, if our conversion rate suddenly tanks, it is normally not a question of on the site. It is actually a question about something in the context, right? And if it's a question about something changing, then we cannot solve it by looking at our own. Because if we only look at our own data set, then we will focus on our own data set and say, oh my God, I have a problem here. My conversion rate is going down, so I need to fix something on the site. And the challenge is, the problem we're having with the conversion rate cannot be fixed by fixing something on the site. We actually have to reconsider the setup. We need to reconsider the pricing. We want to reconsider if we want to remain competitive with this competitor. So in the bigger context, this is looking beyond our own data set. Because if you look at your Google Analytics setup, if you just take a set of data like this, it's fine, but it is only our own universe. We really need more context to be able to explore this. And just a simple thing like what we've been trying to push all the way back to this, saying, how do we add market insight into our context? Because we can have amazing numbers in analytics. And this has been some of the tough stories that we have to tell some of our customers going in, and they've been really, since January, we've been growing 200%. And we're only 3 months into the year, and it's really looking awesome, and saying, guys, you're in big trouble because the market right now is growing 600%. So you're losing market share right now. You think you're doing great because you're comparing to yourself, but in the overall picture, you really have a problem because this is about how you market and not about competing. So analytics is really a one-dimensional thing that will not tell us how we're doing. It will only tell us that we're doing it. To be able to tell us how we're doing in the bigger picture, we need to benchmark against something that is not ourselves. So for this session, I made this model, and it's probably not complete, and it's just my first brain fart in relations to the layers that we need to put on this, is that we have our web data. To understand the web data, we need to put a layer that is still internal, that is effort and activities. What have we been doing to make this stuff happen? Because if we just look at the data and say, hey, it's really good, everything is booming, but the effort has been that we have been spending our entire to achieve these results, then the effort and activities have been stellar. So we need an effort and activities dimension, activities into context. Now, this is where in Google Analytics, for instance, we have a massive opportunity by adding annotations in Universal Analytics. Having these comments we can put into what is happening and what is happening. We also have the opportunity to enriching the web data. Now, for some enriching web data, it's like going in and saying, I can actually and add extra dimensions to the data. I can add profit margins. I can go in and put extra information on the users. I can go and put a bigger context on it. But I can also add more internal business data, saying how are we performing? Do we have a problem with this web performance? So, for instance, we had a client where we increased the number of requests for proposals with 375% by simply fixing something in their conversion setup. And it sounded like a really good deal, but the problem was that the rest of the business broke down because they were not that increase in requests for proposals. So in reality, good web performance were killing the rest of the business. So internal business data will add extra dimension. It could be that because we're shipping more, we have an increase on par with the increase in sales. So we're actually ramping up cost that is not matching the earning on sales. Or it could be even worse. This is my pet favorites. It's saying, do we actually make a profit on the sales that, right? Because we can be sitting there looking at an amazing conversion rate, but actually because the average order margin is too low, we are not making a profit because the average order cost is too high. So part of a business infrastructure could really be a challenge. On top of that, we have the external market data, and that was really best illustrated with the ice cream case, right? If I'm an ice cream vendor, I need to have and add this extra information when it comes to what is going on in the market. Am I having a good year or a bad year? That is really decided by the complexity of what is going on in the market. And finally, the last forecast and trend information on top of all this, saying one of the things that I've been pushing for a long time, saying that when we are doing web activities, we're actually doing it because we want to achieve a goal. Maybe goal information is in there, but that is because we want to achieve a target on the years. But if we go in and benchmark current performance against desired performance or expected performance, then we get this forecast as a benchmark. So we're actually comparing to a context that is the future. And the future with the forecasted and the trend data is actually where management will listen the most to what we have to say, because we're making decisions and actions in the moment because we want to achieve something for the future. So having that understanding that data loves context, because without context, we are not getting the full value of the data. We will do much more with the data if we look for all that, all those aspects. And if we look inside the organization, what we'll see is there's so many forces going on that perfect data in all these aspects is not viable. So it's not realistic to have perfect data. So the key thing is going in and trying to achieve good data, but not necessarily perfect data. We need good enough data to support this process that is the entire elephant, that is the business, and not just have like a holy icon that is, we want to achieve perfect data. Perfect data in itself has no value. I know for us as analysts, that is a really harsh thing to say, but it's much more important that we're able to just enjoy and saying, when is data good enough for me to act on, to take it to the next level so we can make business decision, so we can support the internal business, so we can grow in the market, and we can meet our targets. This is the role that we have to fulfill. But what we also have is the ability to go in and tie this back to the business on the overall level, right? So we're not just focusing on what is happening on the website. We can talk about what is the trend in the market. We can talk about all the stuff that is going on the bigger plane. And for me, that is where we can really shine and define ourselves in the future as analysts. Supporting all this stuff going on, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to saying, so what we would really like to is do attribution. It's something that we cherish, and it's kind of the holy grail for analytics. We want to do customer journeys. It's another holy icon. We want to do customer lifetime value because it gives us an idea of how we're supporting the business and what's going on. But the key thing here is saying, do we want to be correct for a second, or do we want to be good enough for most of the time? Because most of the time is what the business is doing. So do I want one perfect customer journey, or do I want all my customer journeys to be good enough? That is why data loves context, because by understanding context, I can focus on good enough. Data is not the goal, the context and the outcomes are the goal. And with that, I will go back to the session so I can actually see your faces and everything. Questions? Now is the time to harass me, because this was a classic Steen brain fart. So if you think it sucked, that data quality is still more important than context, call me out. Really eager to hear what you have to say. Cool. So, Alban, is that a comment? Or does anybody want to challenge me on this? If you don't, I will call random people on stage and hear what you have to say. So if you haven't been listening, this is your chance to duck out. No, it isn't. Just, Adrian, I know you're good for an opinion. So opinion me. And I can see somebody else, hopefully, is...
Steen, thank you very much. Really interesting, because I think everybody likes to focus on what they're good at, but they 9 times out of 10 miss the bigger picture, not just in the digital space, but like, how does this impact the rest of the business, like everything in the business? And you've got to have some understanding of the business ecosystem that you're operating in, that but it also says that, how can we expect a digital analyst who's an expert at what they do to get that bigger picture? It's are we expecting them now to not just look at the customer journey and whether the marketing is working, all those other bits that we know and understand, but we're asking them to understand much more about how the sales team work, how the call center works, how operations work within our clients. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think the challenge is that right now data is becoming a competitive arena, right? There's so many people moving in on the data. We have business intelligence, we have data departments. Everybody will claim this data on their own. So what is it that we can offer that is something that nobody else can offer? And that's kind of the inside out, that we are the closest thing that we have as a bridge to the market. So what happens on the website is the best pulse that any organization has. It's a live, ongoing pulse meter going on in relation to the context. What is the room that the business is operating in? And it's really the understanding that I see will challenge, that will help analytics challenge the business. The data, we're not adding any value. I just had a conversation, Stephen, I don't know if he's here, where I said, why did anybody hire us? What is the role of the analyst, right? And at the end of the day, my question is classic. Why does any company hire anybody? Because they think the business will do better with you in it. You're not being hired for getting the overachiever award on best data quality.
No.
You're being hired because you're there to support the business.
Yes.
But sometimes we tend to forget that, and we dive in too deep into our own field because it's so damn safe, right?
Yes.
Data doesn't object. You can sit and fiddle with data, and it will never, it will never complain. But the moment you stick your neck out and say, "Hey, the data doesn't support this in relations to the competition," then it's like, "Ooh, ouch," because then you actually have an opinion that is affecting the business. And from a consultancy side, I'll just loop this in. Consultancy side, one of the things we've seen now, we've been trying to selling to customer by promising all the magic that data can do. And very often we're still meeting with, you will have experienced the same thing, customers saying, now our customers don't buy like that and it doesn't work like that. And actually, the most efficient way we have of selling right now is doing small benchmark entries. It's going in and saying, yeah, okay, so we did a comparison. What activities are you doing compared to what your main competitors are doing? And your main competitors have hired 7 digital analysts. They have implemented this MarTech stack. They have done this, all this stuff that we can see from the outside. And this scares the shit out of them because suddenly they understand that if the main competitors are investing in all this stuff, we're either gambling our business away because we don't understand it, or we need to do something. Right? So yeah. Nicholas, you had your hand up and you had a comment as well. So
no, the comment was just about the classic way of ending the presentation. I love that. But my question is, I agree, context is everything. What are your go-to sources for context? Because where do people get context? Would you say, hey, let's just look at news articles all day to get context? Do we have similar web, or do we just go on Google Trends? How do you approach this in some kind of way that?
Yeah, okay. So I teased and I gave you all the problems for not any of the solutions. So for instance, in Denmark, so classic thing is saying, you're running a campaign. What country are you from, Nicholas?
Living in England, from Germany.
Okay, cool. So you're running a campaign in the UK, right? And you're looking at analytics, and you can see, okay, cool. So yeah, we got 2,000 visitors from Hull and 6,000 from Leeds. So are you overrepresented in Hull or Leeds, or is that the way it's supposed to be? You can actually, in most national services, you will be able to do an integrations to the national statistic level that will go in and benchmark in the individual market, saying, so you're massively overrepresented in Hull, but you are ridiculously underrepresented in Manchester, because it's actually not showing up on the radar. And that is information that the marketing department would blow them out of the water, because that would mean reallocating the budgets, saying, so we're missing opportunities locally because we're not spreading the budgets out correctly.
Are there
Or we have,
vendors that do this for you, or are you saying, hey, I'm going to go in and check if I'm underrepresented here, or who does the benchmarking in your example?
So when you set it up, you set up alerts. So you will go in and you will either do a standard report that will go in and say, you do a campaign evaluation in relation to what is going on. Are we overrepresented, underrepresented in markets? And it's actually one of the places where a dashboard will come in handy. So we've done dashboards that are like, so it's just a map of the UK. And what it will be blue, green, yellow, or red, right? And blue, it will mean overrepresented for one area. Green, it would be spot on. Yellow, a bit underrepresented, and red, massively underrepresented. And if you just look at, you will have a live map of what's going on, because this is online marketing, so you can actually, depending on what you're selling. So this is one specific case. But context, you can also get it from Google Trends. It's a classic thing. Google Trends can be imported to BigQuery. So you can actually go, most of the SEO tools are, it's able to pull data in. No, one of the sponsors, what do they call it? Yeah, Habu, right?
Habu.
Habu, it does data clean rooms. So they would actually be able to feed you this data on an anonymized level. So you would have something you could buy information from Tesco, right? So you would buy standard information from Tesco to actually benchmark you in the market. What is the demand here and now? And for instance, the example that he used in his presentation, saying, this is what PepsiCo is doing with Tesco. They're buying this information live from Tesco to be able to optimize their marketing. Right. And I think this is interesting. It ties what is going on into website into the rest of the world. So yeah, I hope I haven't overextended my understanding of analytics, but yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. Very important to be reminded of context. Feel free to give me exactly. All the time.
So yeah. So there is a lot of comments now. It's been a pleasure. I have one. There's room for one question, and otherwise, give the guy a hand. Nicholas and as well. So that would be really awesome. I hope you have enjoyed it, because I will be hanging out in this room if you have any more questions. Otherwise, Peter is coming here. Peter O'Neill is doing a session in this room afterwards. So if you want to hang out and talk context with me, I would love it. Otherwise, go out there and find another room for insights. Thank you, guys. Thank you for stepping up, Nicholas.
Hey, Steen.
Hey, Nicola, you made it back. I'm glad. So I hope it was interesting.
Yeah,
you got a family.
It's great to hear you as always. I've got like one toddler walking around with like a 4-year-old playing with Lego. So, but I wrote quite a long question, and I'm not actually sure whether it made sense in the chat. But I just wanted to kind of like learn from, well, obviously yourself, but then other people in the room as well. Like, how often are analysts actually brought into the stakeholder conversations, like early? Because I've had experience where analysts, like not me personally, I'm not an analyst, but I've had like analyst friends who are like, or connections who aren't always brought in until, oh, we did a thing, can you go away and analyze it? And then, you're not given the context. you got the power to go and find out stuff for yourself, but surely it's helpful to be brought into those conversations as early as possible. That's something that I always try to do. But, you know, like it's because I've got the knowledge of the analyst side as well. I'm just really interested to hear whether that happens or not.
So I think that this is something that wouldn't normally happen. And this is kind of where we need to push the agenda.
Oh, right.
Because we have information, and actually one of the old talks about asking better questions, that people ask us the wrong question because they don't understand all the shit we know. And very often it's the challenge is we don't understand all the shit we know. That if we focus on asking better business questions of the data, we can actually also add a lot to the conversation. And so from that perspective, I think there's a lot that we can add to, even though it's stage. Okay, so yeah.
The time, Steen.
Yeah, okay, it's fine. But I hope it gave an idea. So I will bring on Peter O'Neill. So, hey, Peter.
G'day, Steen. How you doing?
Yep.
Looking
How's it on now? Yeah,
I'm on next, yes.
Yeah, you are, but
in 2 minutes.
Oh yeah. Okay. I was just